All right, welcome to another show of Wealth Builders. My name's Anthony Cangemi. We want to thank you so much for joining us here this morning. We have really an incredible show for you today, and we're so happy to have you with us. And as well, we have our fabulous co-host, Mr. Tony Shore, who really is just really terrific. You know, the show is so seamless with Tony. Orchestrating the timing of the show and just the whole bit. So Tony, we couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much.
Well, I love doing the Wealth Builder show with you, Anthony, because I learn something every week, and I've learned so much about finances and retirement planning and retirement income from you. You've been a great mentor in the financial realm. For my wife and I, we've learned a lot of valuable lessons from you. So this is great. I benefit from it as well as our listeners and viewers out there. So it's a lot of fun. Plus, you and I have fun talking. I just got to see 3 of your team there from Crescent City Retirement Group came up to the Gradient Financial offices, and I showed them our studios where I do a lot of the podcasts, TV, radio, video, podcasting from. So that was fun to see those guys.
Yeah, they had a great time and a great trip. They learned a lot. And, y'all's studios, because of course I've been there as well. I mean, it's professional studios. I mean, green rooms and the whole bit. So y'all got quite a production over there.
Yeah, they've turned it into a professional ad agency and spent a lot of money. Today, our viewers might notice I'm actually in my home studio. So I'm not in our studios at the office today. Okay. Usually I am on Mondays when we record, Anthony, but today I'm in my home studios. I had to stay home because we've got a repair guy coming. So we're working from home today, but my home studio has the same equipment as ours there does. I've had my home studio for longer than I've even been with Gradient. So,
oh wow,
I've recorded a lot of radio shows and podcasts from here over the years and ads and things.
Yeah. So, I mean, with the technology today, Tony, because, of course, technology has infiltrated, all
everything.
Areas of, business and industry. I mean, I guess when you started with radio, I mean, you literally would have to go show up at the radio station.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, when I started in radio, it was actually 41 years ago in 1984. I got my first full-time job,
right? Have radio back then?
No. Yeah.
Well, no.
Ouch! Shots fired.
I know they
shots
fired.
I'm
not that far behind you. I remember when we just had AM.
Yeah.
When FM wasn't even. It was
hardly a thing. Yeah.
Maybe TIX, WTIX, but it was just AM radio when I was a kid. And then
for the most part it was, and then FM came along, and but yeah, I remember my first radio job. I was still a senior in high school, and I was going half days because they let you do that if you had enough credits. So I was able to work full time at the radio station, got my first full time job. And I remember we had big tape reels with tape on it, and to play the commercials and stuff, you'd have to edit and splice the tape with a razor blade, the actual the magnetic tape. We played records, vinyl records, and 45s when we played music.
Yeah.
We'd have to put them on the turntable and cue them up. And so, I've been in radio a long time. You had to go down to the station. If you wanted to do this show, you would have to be at the station in back then. Yeah. I mean, some people, unless you owned a recording studio, and even then you'd have to pre-tape it, bring it to the station. There was nothing like now where we could stream it, or, you're in Nollins and I'm up here in Minnesota.
Right.
We couldn't do it this way. Right.
No.
No,
technology has certainly come a long way.
It has.
And so y'all would have to splice the reels and tape them together. That was the editing. That's
it was unbelievable, a tedious process. And I did it. That's how I first learned. Fortunately, technology from 1984 grew pretty rapidly, pretty quickly, but it wasn't like it is now, all computerized for a long time. I mean,
right.
That didn't really happen until the late 90s, early 2000s. So,
Gotcha.
well, hey, Anthony, we're talking about questions to ask before you retire. And there's some big ones, right? And this is something you can send out to people if they want a PDF of these questions to make sure they can check them off. All they have to do is call your office, right?
Yeah, Tony, and let me just give a little quick background about these questions. It dawned on us a while back that a lot of times we'll meet with potential clients that are hearing us on the radio, and a lot of times they'll have a question or two, but a lot of times sometimes you just you have some questions, but you really don't know sometimes what questions to even ask. I mean, for instance, if we were putting a radio studio together and you asked me, "Hey Anthony, go out, go shopping and go find the equipment that you're going to need to put together a studio for radio." I mean, I would have no clue, right? I wouldn't
Right.
know. I would go, but I wouldn't know what questions to ask. But if you, being in radio, let's say for 40 years, said, "Hey Anthony, I want you to go get some equipment for your radio studio here in New Orleans. But here's the equipment. Here's the questions I want you to ask the vendor, and to kind of arm me, if you will, or equip me with some good questions that I can ask the vendor, so I can make good decisions." And
Yeah.
so what we did, Tony, a while back is we kind of pulled the questions and took some of the top questions that clients have asked us in the past. And frankly, questions that we believe are, after many, many screening processes, to say, what do we think are the most fundamental questions that we should all be asking our financial advisor or our retirement planner? What are some of the primary questions that we feel are important? Right? Valid questions. Now, are these all the questions someone could ask? Well, of course not. But we think these are some foundational questions at a minimum that should be asked. And as you know, we feel there's 5 key areas to a retirement plan: estate and legacy planning, healthcare planning, investment planning, income planning, and taxes. Right? So within those 5 key areas, we have put together this list of questions as it relates to each one of these areas in retirement. And we want to provide that to our listening audience just to be armed, if you will. So when they do have a meeting with their financial advisor or with us or any type of retirement planning person, they may have some questions that are reasonable questions that someone might ask. And so, so today's show is about those questions and what they are. And as you say, it's in a PDF. We want to send it to our listening audience. So you just simply give us a call at 504-828-2171 or go online at crescentcityretirement.com, because you can actually there's a page there where you can download the questions. So you can go right to our website and get these questions. But today's show, as you know, Tony, is going to be about the questions, and hopefully we can get through them all. There's 20 of them.
Yeah. Well, we may only get through half. We'll see how we do and
Sure.
how it goes. But yes, let's dig in. What's the first question people need to ask themselves?
All right. So the first 4 questions of the 20 are going to be wrapped around estate and legacy planning. Okay. And the very first question is, what estate planning document should I have to avoid estate or legacy planning mistakes? So we think it's a good question, just straight out. If you were talking to an estate planning attorney or your financial advisor or a retirement planner, it's a very straightforward question. What documents should we have in place to make sure like we've got our ducks in a row, that we
Yeah.
haven't missed anything as it relates to estate planning. If I pass away, I want to make sure that my assets are efficiently transferred to my heirs, right? And so what documents should I have in place to have, the most efficient outcome?
Yeah. And that's what we all want, the most efficient outcome. But that's a big one that people put off. And that's a big mistake people make, is not having estate planning documents in place. And that really leads into question number 2, which is, how do I leverage what I have for a wealth transfer, right,
Right.
to
Now,
my
yeah.
kids?
Yes, sir. So where we're headed there, Tony, is when it comes to estate planning, you know, people, and we always say there's really no right or wrong in terms of what people want, right? What they want to happen is what's right. And so for people that are really interested in leveraging their wealth transfer, in other words, how much are they passing on to their heirs? What are the tax implications of this wealth transfer? What's the most efficient assets to be passing on to my heirs? And so for people that's important, and let me just say, you talk to some people, I mean, there's an old joke out there that, people will say, well, hey, I've done everything for my kids and all, and I hope the last check I write, bounces. Like they're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
worried
I
about.
want my last check to bounce. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
worried about leaving them anything. Yeah, you hear that from people, don't you?
You do from time to time, but then you also hear from people, oh no, we want to make sure that we transfer our assets in the most efficient way. So again, there's no right or wrong. The person that wants their last check to bounce, then they're not so concerned about leveraging this question about leveraging their wealth. But for the folks that are concerned about that, it's a legitimate question to ask, right? So the question again is, how do I leverage what I have for wealth transfer? So
Yeah.
that's a good question if that's important.
Right. Right. And there are other implications there. So I know that there are tax implications that come along with both of those first two, legacy planning and transferring wealth, leaving wealth for their future generations. So what's question number 3?
Sure. So question number 3 is, what are the most tax efficient assets to pass on to my
Ah,
heirs? So as you know, Tony, there's 3 different tax types, right? There's qualified plans like traditional IRAs, 401ks, any pre-tax dollars, right? Then there is after tax dollars, right? So this is maybe in investment accounts or money that you've already paid taxes on the principal, but of course the interest and dividends and gains are taxable. And then you have Roth money. So the question again is, what are the most tax efficient assets
yeah.
to pass on to my heirs? So again, a very good question, especially if passing assets on and leveraging what, who's getting what and leveraging the estate is important to you. Then this is a really good question to ask.
Sure.
Which so like I say, the first 4 questions are all about estate planning. So we had, what estate planning documents should I have to avoid legacy planning mistakes? Great question. How do I leverage what I have for wealth transfer? Um, now again, some people might have special needs child, some people might have minors. So, how those assets are going to pass on, all very important. What are the most tax efficient assets to pass on to my heirs is question number 3. And then the final question on estate planning is going to be, how do I handle a spendthrift, special needs, or minor beneficiaries?
Yeah, how do
So
you set it up if you've got somebody who blows through money, or who is special needs, or is a minor?
Right.
And how would you recommend that? Typically, it would be the answer is a trust, right? Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. So the special needs is a special needs trust, which our attorney does. We've done a lot of those. Maybe a
Sure.
grandchild has special needs, or a kid, a son or daughter has special needs. So you don't want to leave money directly to them, or they can lose benefits that they had with the state if they inherit money directly, right? And then a
Hmm.
lot of times they can't manage the money.
Hmm.
So you're putting it in a trust. Of course, you have trustees that are using the money for that special need person's on their behalf, but the special needs trust keeps it from being a mess, uh, harming any
Sure.
Medicaid or any
Yep.
benefits that they have. And then as far as spendthrift, as you mentioned, maybe there's a child or grandchild you want to leave money to, but they you'd rather leave it to them over time, so
Right.
much a month, so much a year, and
Sure.
because you feel like if they get a lump sum. And then grandkids, right? Or minors, how do we leave money to minors? I want to leave something to the grandkids, but they're
Sure.
underage. So
Again,
yeah,
a trust. Yeah. Trust is the answer. And then the question before that, what are the most tax efficient assets? And you mentioned it in passing, but Roth IRAs have to be one of the biggest. And we've done whole shows on Roth conversion. So
absolutely. Yes, sir.
that's important. Now, question number 5 is what is the average cost of long-term care? And people need to be asking about long-term care before they retire. They might think, well, I'm not going to need long-term care, but the majority of people end up needing long-term care, don't they?
Yeah, it always it interests me when you're working, you have health insurance,
Yep.
and most people will have some type of long or short-term disability policy. So if they become disabled, they can't work, then their disability income policy will help offset income.
Yeah.
Well, in retirement, long-term care planning is frankly much like that same idea of disability income. It's just that you're retired now, so you're
Hmm.
not worried about replacing your income because you're not working. What a long-term care policy does, Tony, is protect the assets that are generating the income in retirement.
Ah,
So,
sure.
does that make sense? So,
Yep.
we all get the idea that, hey, I'm working for this company, I have health insurance, and I have a disability policy. So, we all understand that concept. If I become disabled, this disability policy is going to help with my income. When you retire, you're not working for that company anymore. And a lot of the income that you're receiving in retirement is coming from your retirement assets, right? So the long term care plan is designed to protect those assets. So we're not draining those assets that are generating the income that you need in retirement. So, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
really what is the average long term care? What does it cost? I mean, for our listeners that have been involved in that with family members, maybe a mom or a dad or a spouse or a sibling, I mean, I think, people recognize that it can be anywhere from, on the low side of 3 or 4 thousand a month to 6 to 8 thousand a month,
Oh yeah, even more. My mom, if you need full skilled nursing care 24/7 like my mother does, it's $11,000 a month.
Yeah,
And for my dad, he's full-time care now, but doesn't quite need the level of care. He's at 7,000.
right,
And assisted living starts around 3 or 4, but if you
right.
get into actual long-term care or
Yeah,
full-time skilled nursing care,
it,
you're going to be looking at 10, 11, $12,000 a month. And
right.
so that you mentioned question 6, which is, how do I protect my assets? You answered that. But then number 7, this is a question I bet you hear. What does Medicare pay for in regards to long-term care? And that's nothing really. I mean, it doesn't cover long-term care, right?
Well, so there's three levels of care: intermediate, custodial, and skilled. And Medicare does pay for about 100 days of skilled care. And this is when you go into a skilled nursing facility, either in a
From a
nursing home,
hospital stay, though.
from a hospital stay, 3 days. And there's some criteria. You got to have been in the hospital for 3 days. You get
And you have to
discharged.
be recovering,
And you have
not
to be, yeah,
permanent.
right. And the way we learned it many, many years ago in our Medicare, training and all is if your condition goes in remission, then you're out.
Yeah.
So in other
Yeah.
words, as you say, as long as you're progressing, right,
And
but
getting
also
better and gonna
you're getting
leave,
and
they'll
you're
cover
gonna
the
leave,
90 to 100 days, and that's at max.
and
And
that's
that's
max.
only if you have to have had hospital stay and after surgery or something in the
And
hospital.
continually getting better over
And
the
and
next.
you're just in the skilled nursing care for recovery,
Right.
then Medicare covers it, but Medicare doesn't cover long-term care, really.
No, it just covers the skilled and all, so really Medicare, but to say, I'm a big fan of Medicare. I mean,
Oh, sure, but you just
Medicare,
can't rely on it. It's not
no,
going to pay for your long-term care. It's not gonna pay that $10,000 a month.
that would be like saying your major medical group plan, your hospitalization and the plan that you have on the job, okay, is going to pay for your disability if you become disabled. It's apples and oranges.
Yes.
Medicare is your medical care. It's hospitals and doctors.
Yes.
It was never designed to be long-term. It's not long-term care.
Yeah.
It's medical care. And it's excellent, incidentally. I'm a big fan of Medicare, but if you're thinking that Medicare is going to pay for long-term care and that's going to be the answer, it's not. And I think most of our listeners probably recognize that. But if you're listening and you don't recognize that, then just be, aware that Medicare is excellent. It's hospitals, doctors, and there's different types of Medicare plans. There's fee for service, there's Medicare Advantage, but none of it was ever designed to pay for long-term care.
Yeah, so you need a plan in place, and you need to make it part of your overall retirement income plan. You need to look at the different long-term care levels: independent living, assisted living.
Correct.
And there are different levels. So we've covered the long-term care questions. Let's go on to number 9, and this is a big one for retirees. How do I determine how much net income I'm going to need in retirement? And you get this a lot. What do I need? What's the number? What's my magic number that I need in retirement?
Yeah, so that's another one, Tony. Don't you? That's a legitimate question. I mean, hey, I'm gonna retire, and you can see the word net is in bold, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why we want to stress net is because that would be what? After taxes, after insurance, kind of what we call take-home money, right?
Yeah.
So you're working and you're getting a paycheck, and they're deducting your federal taxes and state taxes and Social Security and maybe your health insurance premium. So all this coming out of your check, and then you're getting this net amount. Well, that's what we're talking about. So the question is, what do I need? What do I need in retirement? What is the net income that I'm going to need in retirement? We think that's a very important question. Now, we have some ways to go about helping our clients try to determine that, and we can talk a little bit about, for lack of time, let me just say that there are many ways to go about that. And the more cumbersome ways, like really doing some accounting and looking at different accounting plan, looking at, okay, what are we spending? What's the credit card statements look like, and what's actually being spent, and then categorizing, putting that through like Quicken or QuickBook or an accounting platform to be able to really do a thorough budgeting, if you will. And let me just say, that's certainly we've done many of those, and it's involved, right? And I'll say, Tony, in my experience, even as intense as some of that budgeting work is as it relates to accounting, it's not as accurate as the simpler way. And boy, I tell you, when people hear that, they say, "Well, gee, what is the simpler way that's actually more accurate?" And the answer to that, Tony, is what is your net? What are you bringing in now? After taxes, after insurance, after everything's out of your check, what are you living on now? What is that net number? And that is a really good indication, unless you're just saving a bunch of your take home money. And but that's a good place to start, because if we know what you're bringing in now and that has been taken care of your lifestyle, right? Then we've got an idea of, okay, this is what you're bringing in now. Now, depending on how far away you are from retirement, of course, we need to adjust that number for inflation,
Yeah.
right? So if you're retiring in 6 months, then it's probably a pretty accurate number. If you can say, hey, what I'm bringing in and what my wife's bringing in, what we're bringing in together, it's comfortable. It works for our lifestyle, and we're retiring in 6 months. Well, then we know what works, for your lifestyle. And but that's a great place to start, is to look at what you're bringing in now after taxes and insurance. What is the net you're bringing in now? That's a great place to start for your retirement.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. And figuring out that number, that's where you come in. I know you help people. Okay, what are you spending now? Let's figure out where you're at.
Right.
And then the big one, how do we maximize our Social Security benefits? That's a big one.
Yeah, it is, Tony, because income planning is big, right, as it relates to retirement planning.
Mm-hmm.
And Social Security and your Social Security strategy is kind of a foundational. If income planning is the foundational piece to a retirement plan, Social Security planning is the foundational piece for income planning. So it really is a foundational piece, because when we run, and as you know, because Gradient has really a state of the art Social Security maximization report, which bills out the Social Security strategy to where we can see, based on life expectancy, what the best strategy is to draw Social Security. We all know that you can start at 62, and your full retirement age might be 67, and you can wait all the way to age 70. And there's 96 months, right, between 62 and 70. So rather than just throwing darts at a wall and saying, hey, I'll just start at 62, or hey, I'll start at 68, we run a Social Security maximization report that uses life expectancy, of course, average life expectancy, and it gives us 4 scenarios, Tony. It gives us, what if I start early, at 62? What if I wait to full retirement age? What if I wait to 70 and just wait all the way to the highest payment? And then optimization. And let me just say, in many, many reports that we run, between the optimized strategy and, let's say, the worst strategy, okay, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars difference between what you could have collected, and you didn't. So it really is, Social Security planning and maximizing Social Security is such a foundational piece as it relates to income planning, and it's critical. So anyway, yeah, good question, Tony.
Yeah. And I think it's a great one. And unfortunately, we're out of time. It flew by, but we got through the first 10 questions, Anthony.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought it might go this way because these are really important. Let's cover the next 10. We'll do part 2 of questions to ask before you retire next week. But before we go, let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you. You're offering a no charge, no obligation consultation, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No charge, no charge consultation, no obligation consultation. Give our office a call, 504-828-2171. please get your hands on these questions. Whether you're asking us these questions or whether you're asking your current advisor, or these are great questions to arm yourself with. As I say, I don't think they're obviously not all the questions, but at least it gets you started with some really great questions. So please call our office at 504-828-2171 or visit us online at crescentcityretirement.com.
All right. Sounds great. Anthony, great show today. A lot of great questions and a lot of great things to think on and reasons to get a plan in place. Listeners, pick up the phone, give Anthony a call, or go to crescentcityretirement.com and schedule a consultation. That does it for today's episode of Wealth Builders with our host, Anthony Cangemi.